already know, but for those of you that don't, I go to Vanderbilt University in Nashville, and there I'll be a junior this coming up semester, and I'm studying majoring in chemistry. And so, as I was in our modern world, I think it's become very easy for a lot of people to pose science and God as two opposing forces in a battle where only one can win. And I think that's a very dangerous viewpoint to take as somebody who studies both God and science. And so as I was doing some more research into this, I came across this theory of fine-tuning. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but I don't know how well you guys can see this here, but this is the periodic table of elements. This is what I work with every day. These are the 180 some elements that build life around us. And today I'm just going to focus on the smallest one, the most simple one here in the top left corner, which is hydrogen. Hydrogen is a very small atom made of one proton in the nucleus, and then there's a cloud of surrounding space where an electron floats through that space. Now, to really imagine the scale that we're working with here, imagine the head of a needle. The head of a needle is only about 1 millimeter in diameter. If you were to take 10 million of these hydrogen atoms and line them in a straight line, that would fit the diameter of that head of the needle. That's how small we're working with here. But I really want to focus here on the size of this proton. So to imagine the size of that, take one of those 10 million and blow it up to the size of a football field. So you got this big bubble, it's the size of a football field. Now take a mosquito and put it directly in the middle of it. That's how big that proton is. So on the right here, I've got the mass of that proton. And this is a really important number. It's one of about 30 numbers that scientists and physicists would call universal constants. And these numbers are so finely tuned that they cannot be any other number, or else life as we know it would not exist. So if this number here were point 30 zeros and 1 after it, bigger or smaller, the space between this proton and this electron is so important that if that proton was just a little bit bigger or smaller, this atom wouldn't be able to hold itself together. Bonds wouldn't be able to form between atoms. Molecules wouldn't be able to form. Life as we know it could not exist. The universe would be nothing. That's the same for these 30 other numbers that we use every day. These numbers reflect the consistency and the unwaveringness of God. And for me to sit here and tell you that these numbers just happened out of nowhere is nonsense. Only a super intellect like our God could create this. So that's the main point of what drives my faith, especially in regards to science. And so another way to visualize this, I've got another way here. One of the first classes I took at Vanderbilt was a computer science class. And all computer science is just coding. All of the technology that we use in our everyday lives is based off of this. This is just some handwritten code that I wrote for a project in that class. But I brought a bigger project. In the top left here, this is a small portion of the code that runs Google. And Google is based off of about 3 billion lines of handwritten code written by hundreds of thousands of developers from across the world, which runs Google, which we use every day. On the right, this is an extremely small sequence of our DNA. You'll see that it looks a lot less complicated than that, and it's A's, T's, C's, and G's. You got adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. These are nitrogen-based molecules that build our DNA. Now, like I said, there's about 3 billion lines of codes here. In one of your cells in your body, keep in mind there's about 36 trillion cells, give or take, in your body. In just one of those cells, there's about 2 billion A's, T's, C's, and G's that code that cell, and those cells work in conjunction with each other to make you and all of life. Now, what would your response be if I asked you, or what do you think that this Google code just appeared one day?
Yeah, no way.
That doesn't just happen. You know, we already know that it took hundreds of thousands of people to write this. Who wrote that one? Only God could do something like that. And so this is where I get most of my faith through science, is small things like this, the imperfections that drive our lives. And what I've said, a lot of what I've said today is This is very basic stuff. That textbook that I brought, that was, it's my first chemistry class textbook. And this is just a general chemistry class, very basic stuff. We cover from front to back, I think there's like 1,000 pages or so pages in there. We cover that front to back in about 16 weeks. And it's actually, you can flip through it and just look at some of the stuff and try to read it. And it's actually so basic that a lot of it just can't really paint the whole picture. And so science is this extremely vast and complex thing that we see every day. And now as a scientist, I look at it a lot closer and I notice it a lot more. But it's this vast thing that people dedicate their lives to understanding. And they won't, but there has always been and always will be a simple answer to the perfection of all of it, and that is God.
So I always wonder, how in the world can somebody look at this and come to a different conclusion?
Exactly.
Right.
The question is is it more plausible that this stuff just gradually happened this way, or think about this: if you were to design life, how would you do it? It wouldn't be a random ordered thing. It would be very precise. You would design it and you would build it. And that's what God has done.
Well, and you and I talked a little about this, and I would kind of bring this back to the group. You know, in here we know that God always was, always is, and always will be constant. You know, he's not, you know, he doesn't change. He always is and always will be. And so when you talk about these 30 principles, you know, I have to assume that those principles have been constant throughout all of existence. Mm-hmm. And I think that also reflects God, and it's also comes back to the word that, you know, God is constant. We can depend on God to be God. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what, to me also is, you know, as he's kind of peeled some of this stuff back, and it's way over my head. I'm thankful that we have people like him that can go and learn this stuff and use it to better our lives. But when I get to hear him talk about these things and get to present it this way, you know, I'm thankful that we have a God that could create all of this. And you know, how much more will we learn over the course of time if we're lucky? Because I gotta believe right now we're probably just scratching the surface, right? I mean, we understand this much, and we can see through science. You know, again, if this is one of God's tools, what a great God he is, you know.
Well, I have a good friend who's a mechanical engineer. He's got a couple of master's degrees, but if you talk to him, you met him. Remember Lonnie, buddy of mine from that? You talk to him.